The dual citizenship crackdown is real and it's rapidly accelerating. In 2025, we saw more countries restrict citizenship access than any year in recent history. Italy shut down pathways overnight with an emergency decree, and multiple countries proposed doubling their residency timelines. So if you're planning to pursue dual citizenship, this video will help you understand exactly what's driving this and what it means for your timeline. So let's start with what actually changed in 2025. Well, first, Portugal tried to increase its residency requirement from 5 years to 10 years. So far, the Constitutional Court has blocked it, but they're likely to revise and try again in a few months. And Sweden proposed going from 5 to 7 years, Poland from 3 to 8. And France succeeded where Portugal failed, adding stricter language requirements and bringing in civic tests as of January 2026. Italy issued an emergency decree in December last year, restricting citizenship by descent to just 2 generations. So your most recent ancestor must have been born in Italy and died as an Italian citizen. This is an overnight change that affected millions. And Spain ended its golden visa program quite a long time ago now, and Malta shut down theirs completely. Cyprus and Bulgaria already followed suit. So the pattern here is that descent programs are being restricted, naturalisation timelines extended, and investment programs shut down. All of this is happening at the same time. Not every country is doing this. There's a few like Ireland, Belgium, the Netherlands, and several others that haven't changed anything. So viable residency to citizenship pathways do exist across Europe, but the trend is unmistakable. We're moving towards more restriction, not expansion. So that's what's changed, but nobody's really answering, why is this all happening right now? So why is this happening now? Well, basically, over recent years, the demand side has flipped. People from supposedly stable Western countries are now the ones seeking more options. For example, 1 in 5 Americans wants to emigrate, according to a Gallup survey, and British nationals have been scrambling to reclaim their EU rights after Brexit. According to CNN, they've surged into the top 5 nationalities that are seeking dual citizenship. And countries are looking at these numbers and getting a little bit worried. For example, Italy has 60 million citizens, but there's 60 million or more descendants who could qualify under the old rules. And that's a potential doubling, so it's pretty significant. And citizenship comes with obligations for states. Healthcare, consular services, benefit claims, and so on. Italy did propose a €2,000 annual fee for non-resident citizens to access healthcare. And that kind of gives you an indication about how they're thinking fiscally. Post-COVID, it showed countries that citizenship distribution matters a lot during crises. It's all about who can enter during lockdowns, who can access healthcare, and who claims benefits. After that, citizenship became a security and a fiscal issue. And there's also a level of political backlash at play here. This whole thing about citizenship of convenience or paper citizens who never integrate and never contribute to the tax base. I mean, some criticism is fair, right? Countries built in generous rules when mobility was limited. But now you could have Italian citizenship, live in California, never speak Italian, and still access benefits. And that does create resentment. Even in the US, recently Senator Moreno proposed banning Americans from holding dual citizenship. It's probably unlikely that that law will pass, but the fact that it's even being proposed shows that dual citizenship is becoming mainstream enough to provoke this level of backlash. It's now a political issue, and that makes the policy environment surrounding it much more unpredictable. So nothing demonstrates this unpredictability better than what Italy did in December. Let's take a closer look at what that involved. Now, the Italy situation is a really powerful case study and a cautionary tale, really, about how quickly these things can change. So just last month, December 2025, Italy issued an emergency decree that limited citizenship by descent to just 2 generations retroactively. So if you were already applying, then too bad, you were out of luck. In the past, Italy used to have one of the most generous descent programs in Europe, if not the world. There was no generation limit all the way back to 1861, and millions of people qualified for this in countries like the US, Brazil, Argentina, and others. But then, one emergency decree shut down most of those pathways. And multiple judges did refer this to Italy's Constitutional Court, and there's a hearing scheduled for March this year. The legal argument is pretty solid here. Retroactive revocation of birthright citizenship violates constitutional principles. So let's see what happens. Chances are it will get struck down or modified. But the important thing here is that the attempt itself is the signal. The government is willing to fight this battle. And a few months ago, Portugal tried something similar with naturalisation. They wanted to extend the residency timeline from 5 years to 10 years and make some other changes as well. But the Constitutional Court so far has blocked it. but the government is likely to revise the law and give it another shot. So constitutional courts are buying time, but they're not stopping this trend. So eligibility today doesn't guarantee that you're going to be eligible tomorrow. And Italy has really demonstrated that in a very powerful way. So if you're trying to figure out which EU pathway makes sense for you, I'm putting together a decision framework, and there's a link in the description if you want to join the waitlist for that. The lesson here is that you can't just apply whenever you're ready anymore. And with all this talk about restrictions, I need to address something really important. EU citizenship is still very much worth pursuing, and it may be more valuable now than ever before. And let's take a quick look at why that is. So when you become a citizen of any EU country, you also get the right to live and work in 27 EU countries in total, along with Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland, which are not part of the EU, but they have agreements that allow freedom of movement. So in total, that's 31 countries, more than 500 million people, and access to vastly different economies and opportunities. You can start a business in Berlin, you could work remotely from Lisbon, or retire in Spain, all without any need for visas or work permits. So that's an actual freedom of movement right that fundamentally changes what's possible in your life. In terms of education, your children can study at universities across Europe at affordable local tuition rates instead of international rates. And in many countries, like Germany, for example, that means free or nearly free university. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential savings here. Then there's healthcare access across the EU and the EEA. That's quality systems without the costs that you'd face as a foreign national. You also have career flexibility. You can follow different opportunities across an entire continent without any more immigration constraints, whether that's a tech job in Amsterdam, a finance role in Zurich, or creative work in Copenhagen. There are no visa caps, and you don't need to have employer sponsorship. And given global instability, having the legal right to be somewhere else is a very strategic move. We saw this illustrated very clearly during COVID, and we're seeing it again now. So the path is getting harder, yes, but the asset that you're working towards is extraordinarily valuable, and perhaps more so than ever before, given the current uncertainty. And it's still very much worth the effort. And this is especially true if you're a US citizen, because US citizens face a unique calculation that makes this decision both a little more complicated and in some ways even more valuable. So US citizens face a complication that most other nationalities don't have to deal with, and that is citizenship-based taxation. The US taxes its citizens on worldwide income no matter where they live. So you can move to Portugal, become a Portuguese citizen, live there for 30 years, and you still have to file US tax returns. And you're dealing with FBAR, FATCA, and potential double taxation. Yes, there are treaties that deal with this, but you still have to go through the hassle of filing that tax return every year. So it's a real administrative burden. But despite that burden, American demand for second citizenship is really exploding at the moment. And 6% of US nationals also hold dual citizenship, according to a recent poll by YouGov. So what are Americans actually getting from this? Well, first, the right to live and work in another country long term. Yes, a US passport might be powerful for tourism, but it doesn't give you the right to just move to Europe and stay there. You're limited to just 90 days in the whole Schengen zone, and then you have to leave for another 90 days. But having EU citizenship changes that completely. You can live anywhere in the EU indefinitely. You can access healthcare, education systems, study at local tuition rates instead of international student rates. Basically, you have options. So COVID showed Americans that even a powerful passport has limits. Europe was open if you were European, but closed if you weren't. If you're a US citizen, the calculation is complicated. You're taking on tax complexity, but you're gaining real freedom of movement and long-term options. And increasingly, Americans are deciding that these trade-offs are worth it. So if you're one of these US citizens or anyone else planning the naturalization route, how do you actually think about this strategically? Because as we've seen, the old playbook doesn't work so well anymore. Let's find out. So first off, a fundamental thing that you should always remember is that your timeline to actually acquiring citizenship is going to be longer than you think. Getting your residency permit is just step one in the process. Step two is maintaining that for however long your target country requires, which could be 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, or maybe more. But then applying for citizenship can take another potentially 1 to 3 years to process. It all depends on the country. So if a 5-year timeline becomes 7 or 10 years mid-process, then that is years of additional visa renewals and maintaining ties to the country. So when choosing where to go, the naturalization timeline should be a major factor. Ireland is 5 years. It has English language, EU access, and allows dual citizenship. The Netherlands is 5 years, but typically requires you to give up your previous nationality. Belgium is also 5 years, Spain is 10, but 2 if you're already a citizen of a Latin American country. And Portugal is currently 5, but there are plans to change that, as I already mentioned, to 10 years. But the real question here is, where can you actually build a life for 5 to 10 years or more? Where does your industry exist? Can you learn the language? Do you want to? And can you integrate properly? Because that is what they're looking for these days. Countries want you to actually integrate and not just have physical presence. They want language proficiency, they want cultural knowledge, community ties. Basically, they want to make sure that you're actually a genuine part of society. And this is exactly the kind of analysis that I'm putting into my EU citizenship decision framework, helping you think through these variables for your specific situation. If you're interested in that when it's ready, you can join the waitlist in the description. So build margin into your plan, assume that rules will get stricter, and assume that processing will take longer than stated. Make sure you have some financial buffer in place for these extended timelines. So naturalisation through residency still works, but it does require genuine commitment. You're building an actual life in another country for the better part of a decade. So understanding all this, where does that leave us? Naturalisation through residency still works. People do it successfully every year. But the easy era is over now. You can no longer get around the commitment necessary. 5 to 10 years living somewhere, learning the language and integrating into society. That's what countries want in 2026 and beyond, and they're building systems to make sure it happens. The question is whether you're willing to go along with it. Not necessarily just for a passport, but to actually build a successful life in another country. If you are, the opportunity is wide open, but you do need to be strategic about where you're going, realistic about the timeline, and honest with yourself about the commitment level that you can maintain. The window for casual citizenship is closing, but the window for genuine relocation and integration is still wide open. EU citizenship has never been more valuable, and that's exactly why countries are making it harder to access. These restrictions are happening because demand has exploded so much in the last couple of years. Programs still exist, there are lots of them out there, people still naturalize, but the path is longer and it really does require genuine commitment. But the destination, the rights, and the opportunities across 31 countries in the EU has not diminished. So if you're planning naturalisation, you're committing to 5 to 10 years in another country. Don't forget that, because it really is significant. But the trade-off is the freedom to live and work across Europe, more opportunities for your children, and the optionality and having a plan B in an uncertain world, which makes it really worthwhile. So think about which country makes sense for your line of work, or if you're remote working, which country would you enjoy living in? What about the language difficulty, and how do the timelines compare? All this stuff is why I'm building the EU citizenship decision framework. It's based on the factors I considered and analysed of all the EU countries when I was deciding in 2019 to relocate to get my EU citizenship back through Portugal. This framework will help you make a strategic decision based on your actual situation. If you want to join the waitlist for that, you can find the link in the description. And do subscribe to Digital Emigre for more analysis like this on citizenship, residency, and building an international life. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.